today's Airborne. Cessna TTx makes a successful first production flight. Beechcraft to challenge the LAS award again. And New York's Mayor Bloomberg strikes a new low in attacking the biz jet industry. I'm Ashley Hale. Welcome to Airborne on Aero-TV. Cessna's new TTx completed its first production flight on Saturday, March the 2nd. The single-engine composite aircraft departed from the Cessna facility in Independence, Kansas, and performed the flight in and around southeast Kansas. Brian Steele, the business leader for the TTx, said, quote, "In the course of the flight, the pilot took the aircraft to 17,000 feet and achieved a speed of 213 knots. The TTx is a nimble, top-of-the-line airplane. It's the world's fastest fixed-gear, single-engine piston aircraft in production. Pilots who like to go fast and go in style are going to enjoy the TTx," end quote. The TTx will compete directly with the Beech A36, the Cirrus SR20, and possibly the Diamond DA50 should that airframe come into production. With Beech on the rise and Cirrus on the decline, ANN is looking forward to seeing how the market responds to the TTx, which will be the launch customer for the Garmin G2000 and will offer optional flight into known icing or FIKI capability. As we previously reported, Beechcraft has, without much surprise, formally protested to the U.S. Government Accountability Office the USAF award of a light air support contract to its Brazilian competitor, Embraer. Beechcraft states that an estimated 1,400 jobs in Kansas and other states are in jeopardy as a result of the Air Force's decision. Beechcraft says they can't understand the award going to Embraer when the Air Force rated their aircraft as exceptional and confirmed that they were the lower-cost solution. Embraer, however, is not going to fold their tents and silently steal away. In a statement, the company says that their Super Tucano A29 also received an exceptional rating and countered Beechcraft by noting the aircraft will be built in Jacksonville, Florida, supporting more than 1,400 American jobs, reflecting both the large U.S. supplier base. More than 100 companies will supply parts and services for the A29 Super Tucano and new jobs that will be created by SNC and Embraer. The Air Force has once before awarded the LAS contract to Embraer and SNC. Beechcraft challenged that award and won reconsideration, causing this latest renewed controversy. New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg has hit a new low among those politicians who lately has seemed to zero in on the bizjet industry as the root of all evil in the world and the cause of our nation's economic crisis. On a recent radio show, Bloomberg, who is one of the richest men in the world, said, quote, "You can arrive in your private jet at Kennedy Airport, take a private limousine, and go straight to the shelter system. Walk in the door, and we've got to give you shelter. That's what the law is. I didn't write the law," end quote. Fortunately, even homeless rights advocates aren't buying this extraordinary hyperbole. Patrick Markey of the Coalition for the Homeless replied that, quote, "It's pretty ludicrous to claim that there are people flying in private jets and taking private limos to the shelter system." He didn't seem to want to take responsibility for the fact that there are more than 50,000 people sleeping in city shelters, including 21,000 children, end quote. Mayor Bloomberg has chosen, without reason, to be the latest politician to attack an industry that is engulfed in the layoffs of tens of thousands, multiple bankruptcies, mergers, and shutdowns, rather to engage in an examination of the real issues that this country needs to address. Among the control towers on a list for possible closures due to the sequester is one that will be seeing a lot of traffic early next month. Tom Patton has that story.
The FAA says impact on local communities will not affect the agency's decision to close any tower. Therefore, Florida's Lakeland Linder Regional Airport Tower finds itself facing possible closure because of the effects of sequestration. Lakeland, of course, is home to the annual Sun and Fun Fly-In, But closure of the tower would not necessarily mean there would be no air traffic control for the early April event. The Ledger newspaper reports that, according to a source at the FAA, towers at airports like Lakeland would be shuttered on April 7th, 2 days before the scheduled opening of the air show and fly-in. Sun and Fun President John Leanhouse told the paper that private controllers will be hired if the FAA pulls their personnel out of the tower. He said the public would not know any difference, but he said hiring the controllers would cut into proceeds from the show, which are normally used to offer scholarships and grants to schools in Polk County, Florida. The FAA says negative impact on the national interest is the only criterion that could impact a tower closure that falls below the selected activity threshold. A decision on closing Lakeland is due on or before March 18th. For Airborne, I'm Tom Patton.
Marietta, Georgia-based SWT Aviation is working diligently toward a planned first flight of its SportCub XP float plane sometime soon in Central Florida. John Moreland, the company's Florida sales rep, tells ANN that after some refinements to the landing gear advisory system, taxi tests have been underway this week. He said the aircraft is very stable on the Meade floats, quote, which is what we expected, since the SportCub installation is almost identical to our previous Carbon Cub installation. Moreland said his preference is for a day of light winds and very light chop, quote, so as to best have an initial look at the way the floats handle on the water, end quote. Moreland added that they don't expect any problems because the Meade 1430A float system has flown before and proven to be a stable and strong float. You're watching Airborne, more in a moment.
Since the early days of powered flight, pilots have struggled with landing in crosswinds and learning proper crosswind landing techniques. Even today, most crosswind landing skills are learned through trial and error, sometimes with disastrous results. Believe it or not, the most common contributing factor in weather-related accidents each year is crosswinds. The second most common factor is wind gusts. In fact, crosswinds and wind gusts cause more landing accidents than fog, thunderstorms, and icing combined. That's where the Redbird X-Wind SE comes in. It teaches pilots the proper techniques to meet and beat these top two causes of weather-related landing accidents. By placing pilots in gusty crosswind conditions for extended periods of time, the X-Wind SE gives instructors all the time they need to teach the pilot the proper techniques for landing in challenging crosswind conditions. For more information on Redbird flight simulations, the Redbird X-Wind SE, and Redbird's entire line of flight training devices, visit www.redbirdflightsimulations.com.
Welcome back. If you'd like to suggest a story for Airborne, Aero-TV, our website, or podcast, you can drop us an email to news-spy@aero-news.net. Bombardier Aerospace says that the CSeries aircraft is making excellent progress as the program readies to transition to the flight test phase in order to achieve first flight by the end of June 2013. Mike Archimone, President Bombardier Commercial Aircraft, said, quote, we're now focusing on 3 key areas that will lead to our safety of flight permit: static airframe testing, building of flight test vehicles, and on-the-ground testing, end quote. Bombardier also confirmed that it has introduced an extra capacity seating option that will increase the CS300 aircraft seating to up to 160 passengers, providing customers with additional payload and range flexibility, as well as increased productivity. The extra capacity seating option, which requires the addition of a second pair of overwing exit doors, will be available both in production and as a retrofit should customers need that flexibility in the future. The U.S. general leading the F35 acquisition program had some harsh words for prime contractor Lockheed Martin and engine manufacturer Pratt & Whitney during an interview at the Australian Air Show. Lieutenant General Christopher Bogdan, who leads the $396 billion program, said the two companies are trying to squeeze every nickel out of the U.S. government when it comes to the Joint Strike Fighter. And while Reuters reports that he said it is not his job to be a cheerleader for the program, his words are being seen as potentially problematic for the program. In the 1990s, the Air Force was forced to dramatically cut its orders of F-22 Raptors after politicians cut funding for the program. Some industry analysts say General Bogdan's comments could have a similar effect on the F-35 program. Richard Abolafia, an analyst with the Teal Group, said Australia is already looking at upping its acquisition of FA-18 Super Hornets, which could affect the number of F-35s it ultimately buys. A senior Pentagon official also took issues with Bogdan's statement, saying that the contractors have the same feeling about how they are being treated when it comes to the JSF, and that the U.S. government does not negotiate with industry through the press. Well, it's Tuesday and time for our Aero Video of the Week. Who among us has ever forgotten the sheer joy of their first airplane ride? Today's AVW will bring those memories flooding back, and maybe even a tear or two, as you watch the cute as a button Lainey wave and shout, "Hi Mommy," on a low flyby and what is quickly becoming an internet favorite. Find this gem by searching YouTube for Lainey's first airplane ride. Finally, today on Airborne, a passenger on a United flight found that sometimes airlines really do care. Kerry Drake got a call on January 24th that his critically ill mother was dying. He immediately booked a flight from San Francisco to Lubbock, Texas, in an effort to see her one final time. But by the way the flights were scheduled, there was only a 40-minute window available for Drake to make his connection in Houston, and his connecting flight was the last one of the day. When the flight from SFO was delayed, he thought he'd missed his last chance to see his mother. But CNN reports that he emotionally relayed his plight to the flight attendants, and they said they would see what they could do and told the captain. On the ground in Houston and racing through the airport, he was about 20 yards from the jetway when he heard a gate agent say, "Mr. Drake, we've been expecting you." The captain of the flight from SFO to Houston had radioed ahead. The crew held the plane to Lubbock so that Mr. Drake could be on the flight. CNN reports that Drake did manage to see his mother before she passed away. Well, remember, you can get comprehensive, real-time, 24/7 coverage of the latest aviation and aerospace stories anytime at aero-news.net. And please remember, Airborne is streamed twice weekly and is always online. Join us again this Friday. I'm Ashley Hale. Thanks for watching.